Before I begin, let's give all credit to the stupidity of the person it belongs to, Nerdrotic Gary Beekler, who has jumped on the bandwagon that's saying basically Arya is a Mary Sue and girl power. He literally says this in the video. I'm guessing that his hatred that has sprung from The Last Jedi, Ghostbusters, Star Trek Discovery, Doctor Who, and Marvel have all spread into every aspect of his life. Or he is just jumping on the bandwagon to get his clicks, which, hey, that's his job. He needs to do that. And he needs to be able to support his family. I can understand that. But the stupidity still should be addressed. Arya is not a Mary Sue, even though she was the one to kill the Night King. You saw her sneak up on people constantly throughout the entirety of episode 1 and 2 of this current season. This was done because people might have forgotten the whole thing, the seasons beforehand, because what has she been doing this entire series? Learning how to fight, learning from the Faceless Men, and sneaking up and killing people. Every person she has ever killed has been some sort of a sneak attack. So, it's not that shocking that she could sneak up on people. And what was her entire motto throughout the entirety of the first season that she carried on? And that was even mentioned before she killed the Night King. Don't remember?
There is only one God, and his name is death.
And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
What do we say to the god of death? Not today. The Night King is the god of death. He can raise the dead, use them as his army. So, her entire 8-season arc has been her literally saying no to the Night King. So, let's get into the moron. I'll be clipping his actual footage in and pausing it when I need to, talk about his stupidity, because he even references how if this was like Endgame, Bran would have time traveled all the way back to when the Night King was formed, even though they've established that he can't interact with anything when he travels in the past. But he'd be able to stab the Night King and, oh, I got him! And then, oh no, but the Night King still exists in the future. Because, they killed Thanos in 2014, but he's still alive in 2018 to do his little snap. So, yeah.
Nerdrotic.com.
The Long Night is how the Westerosi refer to a period when a terrible darkness fell across the known world. It occurred during the Age of Heroes, approximately...
He starts off with quotes about it, and he tries to defend his actions by saying how he read the books and what was cut out of the show. That's like me if I only complained about the MCU because, I can complain because I've watched all the movies and I used to be a huge fan of it, and I used to read all the comics and I watched all the cartoons. No, when I complain about the MCU, it's about the writing flaws. The thing that actually affects the movie, or the really bad CGI, like the Mark Ruffalo head from the Infinity War, or how horrible the dusting looked, or Tom Holland's suit from Infinity War, at least in the theater. They fixed it a little better on the streaming version and the Blu-ray, but still.
8,000 years before Aegon's conquest. In the midst of a great winter that lasted for years, the Long Night lasted a generation and laid waste through famine and terror. Welcome back, everybody. Gary here from Nerdrotic, and we need to talk about Game of Thrones. Is it pointless from here on out? Well, the last Long Night lasted generations, but it's obvious what they did wrong. They didn't have...
And before he gets too far into his stupidity, let's address the fact here that the Long Night lasted for generations, so you want him to continue that entire fight just for those 8 episodes. And he also brings up how it's pointless because now it's for the Battle of the Throne. The entire point of season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is who gets the throne. It's the Game of Thrones. Now, he mentions it, but, well, the books are called The Song of Ice and Fire. Well, you're not reading the books, dumbass. You're watching a show. Now, let's get this through heads. You're not reading books. You're watching a show. This is the same thing as people saying, the book was better when you're comparing it to a movie. You're not reading a book or listening to a book on audio. You're watching a movie. You cannot judge a movie on its book. You cannot judge a book on its movie. They are two separate entities. That's why they don't say the movie is written by the author, unless it's like J.K. Rowling and the Fantastic Beasts films, because those aren't really books. But anyways, they say inspired by, based on the novel by, and they fill in the blank of the author's name. Because guess what? That's not the story that the author told. And if you want to go by that, all these people have been praising To Kill a Mockingbird all these years as a great movie should consider that movie to be a piece of shit. That movie cuts about 80% of the book out. They don't show anything about Scout growing up, trying to be forced to act like a quote-unquote girl instead of being a tomboy that she is. And I haven't seen the thing in a long time, but they cut out a lot of stuff. But I honestly believe that they cut out a lot of the stuff about Boo Radley from the beginning of the book, because they cut out a lot of the book. They basically only include the trial by the guy because, oh, he's black, so he has to be guilty, when he wasn't. He was actually innocent. So the entire point of the book was, growing up in the South, not being the typical girl that all the other girls were, and then also to show the racism of the South. They got to show the racism of the South, they just cut everything else out.
Of an aria, or it would have been over lickety split with respect to Ed, Jorah, Melisandre, and Theon.
Lickety split. An hour? But I get where he's coming from. That's supposed to last for eons. Well, yeah, if the Faceless Men had helped, maybe it would have been over lickety split. You gotta remember, she's not Arya, she is the girl. Or if the Three-Eyed Raven had helped, instead of just sitting in his tree hiding, maybe it would have.
And what we are left with after the long night of disappointment is yet another franchise's split fandom. Now, I've talked a lot about The Long Night in a lot of live streams and a video. They will be linked in the description.
I won't be sharing
But we
those
need
links.
to ask the question, where do we go from here? What are the stakes? Is Cersei truly the big bad? The fan backlash certainly has not died down. Now, there are still many people who are just in denial and think the Night King is going to come back, or we're going to get some new big bad.
I know the Night King won't come back, or there won't be no big bad, because, hey, this isn't the Song of Ice and Fire. This is the Game of Thrones. Once again, if you want the books, read the books. Oh, you're going to have to wait for, 30 years, because it's taken Martin, 20 just to write the 4 that are out, and for the last, I believe, 4 years, he's been saying how he's going to almost get done with the next one to come out. I think The Dreams of Winter or something like that, and he still has 2 to go. So tell me how that works out for you in a couple years. Then you can say you have your ending for the Song of Ice and Fire. You don't have the Song of Ice and Fire's ending. You have the Game of Thrones ending. If you wanted a Song of Ice and Fire's ending, you never should have watched the show. Ever. I don't care if you were interested. I don't care how many people told you how great it was. If you wanted the books, you should have read the books.
at some point, but we only have 3 episodes left, and it clearly looks like we're back into the politicking of Game of Thrones. And yes, I've heard all of you out there who told me it's called a Game of Thrones. Well, it's based on A Song of Ice and Fire, and I've gone over that as well. And yes, I do understand.
And so did I just now, dumbass.
The show. I do understand what I've read in A Song of Ice and Fire. I do understand George R. R. Martin, but even George is hedging a bit on if the show is going to end like the books. I will get to that later. But even the people who enjoyed last...
And if George wanted the show to end the way the books did, he would have either A, not wrote all of those extra stories that he's been pumping out, or B, had put it in his contract when they sold the rights to the story, that they have to adapt it properly. And he has to have the final say in the screenplays. You know, like Rowling did with her Harry Potter franchise. That's how much control she has over it. I believe George, who has been around a lot longer and has also worked in the film industry, knows exactly how that stuff happened. He just wasn't thinking. And now he's upset about it.
Sunday's episode probably still have a little sinking feeling in their stomach that they're going to get something anticlimactic. It feels...
And yes, as I said in my review thing, I did think, well, I expected, well, more. I couldn't explain what, but I'm not angry that Arya is the one that killed the Night King. And I'm a little happy that it didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to happen, because I'm not the best at these guessing things, as I've stated multiple times in all my other little videos if you've seen them. But if Jon had killed the Night King before all the walkers had gotten up and there had been no real fight, all these people would be bitching about how easy it was for him to kill him. You know, they both had the same type of metal blade. One had a dagger, one had a sword. I mean, would they have preferred the Night King to break Arya's neck when she stabbed him? Just so that they both died at the same time? Then they'd be bitching about how, you killed the girl! I mean, I think the guy from Supernatural said it best when he was writing what was supposed to be the ending for the series back in Season 5. How endings are hard. No matter what, you're going to have fans bitching and complaining about it.
Like you just watched the Super Bowl and we're getting ready to watch the Pro Bowl. It's about stakes. We just battled for the world and now we care who sits on the Iron Throne. It's just not as exciting. So we're led to believe that Cersei is the big bad now. And we're supposed to be afraid of her one zombie and her one crazy old man with a big bow and arrow and her crazy pirate. Well, that's not...
And let's not forget the Golden Army that she hired and that were brought over. And the crazy pirates army that he has, because remember, she was only his cousin was only able to take 3 ships, so he still has all those other ships with all his men on it. And let's not forget that the Night King has just killed a majority of the Dothraki, a majority of the dickless guys that Grey Worm protects. And see, I don't even know names, and I pay attention more than this guy does. This guy who mentions the books constantly.
Going to be the case. They are going to subvert our expectations again. Now, are your expectations subverted if you expect it? No. But before we think that they'll come up with something that will bring the fandom back together, we need to be reminded Dan and Dave are writing this. The ones who left out Lady Stoneheart, who left out Victorian Greyjoy, who made Euron an idiot.
You want all that stuff? As I've stated before, read the books. Martin could have put in his contract that they can only adapt his books if they do it 1 episode a chapter. He could have done that. The only way they could have had it is that. And if they said no, well, I don't need them to be adapted. My books are selling enough as they are, and I've been able to live off these books this long. I don't need more money. But he didn't. He worked in Hollywood. He knows how that shit works. He knows how writers in Hollywood are. He just didn't think about it. Or he didn't care. Because if you really want to quote-unquote protect your books from when they're being adapted, you could have it be that the script has to be run by you. You get final say. Because Rowling even got so much power that only British actors got to be casted. Not Americans with British accents, or Asians with British accents, or Australians. It had to be British people. It had to be. Not people with fake accents, because, Benedict Cumberbatch fakes an American accent. How come we can't fake British ones? So, Martin had all the power when he was signing over. And they're the ones that wanted to end it. They could have just decided we're going to adapt the books exactly the way it is and keep the show going. It's like Martin said, there was enough plot in the books that you could have had 10 seasons out of this series, and his books aren't even over yet. If you go by the 10 episode a season arc. But they didn't want to because it cost too much, and HBO didn't realize that. Or they wanted to shorten it down.
Who made Littlefinger an idiot, who put Varys with Daenerys even though he hates magic. They sent Gendry sprinting to the wall, who sent a raven to the bottom of Westeros at Dragon.
Isn't this from the same people that when you bring up the fact that the timeline thing for Endgame doesn't make any sense, they say, well, don't think about it. You're not supposed to think about it.
Stone. Then Dany gets the raven, gets on her dragon, flies back up the entire length of Westeros in time to save Jon and the rest of them from the Whites. To give you some perspective, Westeros is roughly the size of South America, so that's like sending a raven from Venezuela to Cape Horn. The distance is almost 7,000 miles. A raven flies 50 miles an hour at top speed. If it's flying constantly, it would have gotten down there in 5 days. That's not even counting Dany's dragon flying time. So we're going to guess a week? And we can't forget the worst offense of all, Dave Benioff is the man who sewed Deadpool's mouth shut. My favorite part about the split fandom is it's the fans' fault. It's our fault for having too many expectations. I've heard some say that some of us are upset because our theories didn't come true. Like we're that attached to our theories. Nobody cares about our theories. We are expected to be surprised. We are expected to be told a good story. And you got me there. I shouldn't have expected a good story with the evidence I've just laid.
I got a good story out of it. Of course, as I said, I'm the one paying attention. I don't go on my phone, go on YouTube while I'm watching these shows. I don't try to multitask. My entire attention is given to the show. That's why I don't watch them when I'm sitting at work. I watch them when I wait for I get home when I have a TV. That's also probably why I could actually, see the thing. Everybody's complaining about not being able to see. Well, I had proper lighting. I was actually paying attention. I wasn't trying to multitask. And I saw everything perfectly fine. I've seen worse vision on, Harry Potter 6, where you can't see a damn thing.
It out. I've got to relate this to Avengers Endgame, and there will be spoilers, so you might want to dip out for this one.
Here's where dumbass brings up his Endgame crap.
But imagine Avengers Endgame ending with Captain Marvel swooping down and killing Thanos before all of our heroes get...
As I said, let's go back to, imagine if Game of Thrones was like Endgame. That means the battle would just be going on. Bran would have done his 3-eye raven thing. Gone back. And time traveled. The Night King would have stopped fighting Jon. Vanished. Time traveled to where Bran time traveled. And the two would have fought in the past. Like the original Longest Night. The original Longest Night was started because Bran and the Night King time traveled, and now Bran is actually standing, and he's like Shazam. He instantly grows into an adult, and the two fight, and he kills the Night King back then. So the Night King dies all the way back before the Longest Night started. Original Longest Night started, and then the original Night King sees that Bran's killed the older Night King, and he comes up and fights him and Bran kills that Night King. So now the original longest night ended because Bran killed the first Night King and the second Night King, but the longest night still continued because you can't change time, and all this stuff that's happened throughout the Game of Thrones with the Night King also continued because you can't change time. That would be if Game of Thrones was like Endgame. Endgame is garbage, and these people need to admit that their fan service is just letting them get too little attached to it.
Together in that big melee. Imagine how the audience would have felt, and imagine how they would have felt if the Russo brothers said subverted expectations. They would have completely revolted, just like they're doing now. Again, I don't have a problem with Arya taking out the Night King. It just needed, well, a lot of setup, and Dan and Dave have said the only...
Wasn't season 1 through 8 enough setup of her entire story arc? As I said, her entire thing was sneak up on people and kill them. Her entire story arc is, what do we say to the Lord of Death? Not today. So you got you got killing people and saying no to the Lord of Death. I think they did a decent job of that.
The only reason they chose her was because it wasn't expected, not because it felt right for the story. They said it felt wrong for Jon to do the deed. Well, what was behind that decision? I think it was girl power. It has been...
And there you go, he has lost all credibility. It's not girl power. As I said, her entire fucking story arc was sneak up on people, kill them, and saying no to the Lord of Death.
Creeping into Game of Thrones since season 6. And the worst part about it is this isn't a show you needed to do that with. There were plenty of strong female characters, but now I can't differentiate the personality between Cersei, Sansa, Arya, and Daenerys. And it's not just the women I don't recognize anymore, it's the men. I feel like I have been watching a different show for at least the past 2 or 3 seasons. And now we have the culmination of Jon's journey. What exactly is it? For him to sit on the throne? Again, we have 3 episodes left to build up the politicking. That's not enough time. We're going to get a big build up to another battle. There'll be some betrayals, and then somebody will be sitting on the throne, and the realm will be right back where it used to be. They should have just left Robert there. Actually, the realm was better off with Robert.
They should have gone back in time and killed Thanos before he killed the Asgardians. They would have been better off that way. Because Iron Man's daughter was still inside Pepper's stomach, so she would have been born. She would have turned out to be the same kid. Because you can't change the past. So that kid growing up is the past. Captain America should have saved his friend Bucky from being tortured for all those years. Because he knows where Bucky's hiding. What would happen if you take Bucky out of the time stream? Tony's parents get to live. Civil War wouldn't have happened. And King T'Chaka gets to live. What would happen if Thor removed Mjolnir so he could keep it? His little hammer, I can't say that name. Well, if time can't be changed, that means he still had it for Dark World. So he can pull all this shit up about other franchises, but he can't see it in the one he loves. He can't see it in his precious little MCU. Because his fanboyness is just attacking it that much. It's just loving it. His fanboyness is just loving it that much.
So, Jon, what exactly is Jon's journey at this point? He gets Ghost, joins the Night's Watch, loses Benjen, saves Commander Mormont from some whites, then he goes beyond the wall, has to kill the Half-Hand, joins the Wildlings, gets laid by Ygritte, then betrays Ygritte, returns, avenges Commander Mormont, becomes the Lord Commander, executes Ollie, goes to Hardhome to face the...
You know what's funny? This dumbass who was supposed to be such a huge fan of the Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones missed and forgot to mention what happened at the end of the Song of Ice and Fire, because the books literally stopped when Jon was killed. And what happened, the big surprise ending that pissed off a lot of people with the season, with Jon being killed in season 6 at the end. He forgot to mention that he died and came back to life.
Others and the dead, and faces off against the Night King to return to face off with Ramsay. He unites the North, becomes king, meets Dany, goes beyond the wall, faces off the Night King and the others and the undead one more time to have some boat sex. Then he bends the knee to scream at a dragon and then sit his ass on the throne. That was it. Oh, I get it. It was a subversion of the expectation of the heteronormative hero's journey that
Yeah, I think Rian Johnson and all that stuff really affected him. Like, Nerdist got really impacted by the PTSD dream Alan had in Jurassic Park 3 about the raptor saying Alan when Billy was waking him up. Like, they just could not leave that alone for like 2 years. Even if they thought it was a joke, it was just them not being able to drop it.
really Hollywood is not interested in telling anymore. Again, I have read the books. I know George is all about this. This is supposed to be the postmodern Lord of the Rings, but I expected it to be a little more satisfying. Jon being involved in the battle instead of cowering behind a wall.
And didn't they say in episode 2 when they were going over the plan that they didn't want to expose the dragons until the Night King's dragon showed up? And didn't Jon yell at Dany when she just jumped off and left and jumped the gun? Like I said, these people don't remember episodes from week to week. Or they're not paying attention. He's probably on his phone checking comments on his videos.
Would have been a little bit better, but that is done. So what is left? That brings us to the showdown with Cersei, the pregnant soccer mom with a pirate and a big golden army. I really don't think it'll end up like that.
Oh, I have to apologize to Gary here. He does remember the army after the fact, when he's going around a second time. So, I will admit when I am wrong, he did remember the army.
But it could, with the evidence I've laid out, it could definitely happen, but I think they're going to subvert our expectations and there will be a betrayal between Jon and Dany. Something that certainly would work in the books, but won't work with 3 episodes left. And over the last few days, I have heard a lot of theories. Of course, there's the Bran as the Night King one out there, and Daenerys as the Ice Queen. None of those will happen. Although, Dan and Dave were recently on Jimmy Kimmel Live and they were asked, have we seen the last of the White Walkers? Yeah, we're not going to answer that. Well, of course they're not going to answer that because the answer is no, and they want people to watch the rest of the show. Although people are going to watch it anyway. I don't know what they were worried about. They certainly weren't worried about it when
people were going to watch Endgame anyways. What people were worried about, the damn don't spoil Endgame crap.
They were writing The Long Night or wrapping up anybody else's storyline that they rushed through, and HBO wasn't worried about it because they cut these seasons short. Everybody was obviously in a rush to get out the door without thinking about the show's legacy. I'm not going to watch it again, are you? This brings us to George, who
And I would bet good money on Sunday, because this is his livelihood, that he's going to watch it. He's one of the people that said he wasn't going to support Captain Marvel. But yet, he had a Captain Marvel review.
seems to be distancing himself from this show a bit, and it appears it is confirmed that he has been distanced from this show, and it might not have been his decision. Game of Thrones George R.R. Martin reveals traumatic truth about how the TV...
I've already stated all this crap in the video earlier. I don't need to repeat myself. So let's just fast forward a bit through Nerdrotic's video.
A lot added. I know it's hard to come to terms with something you've spent so much time with just completely turning on you in narrative and with political themes being snuck in, agenda being snuck in, and a lot of people are in denial about that, and that's fine. I cover a lot of that here on this channel. I've watched it happen to Star Trek, I've watched it happen to Doctor Who, I've watched it happen to Star Wars, Marvel Comics, and now the MCU.
Labs.
And see, he has been so affected by all this other stuff. It's all he sees now. It's like the people who can only see racism. They can't see anything else. All he can see is the wokeness. And you know, as Dave Collins said the other day in his Infinity War and his Endgame review, sometimes a cigarette, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And you know, I think he's right. Thanks for watching, and hey, no offense to Gary, I get what he has to do. It's his livelihood, and these could probably be his actual thoughts, and hey, maybe he does see this stuff. But as he states in his own video, hey, maybe you don't see it. Well, I don't see it, and I hate episode 8 just as much as everybody else. I did not like Star Trek Discovery. I did not like the latest season of Doctor Who. I didn't like Ghostbusters 2016. Everything he's mentioned, I didn't like it. And I've agreed with him on almost everything else. Like 90% of it. So, hey, what can I say? There's nothing really more. He thinks one way, I think the other. That's what conversations are for. You know, this type of video is why I miss the ability to do, like, response videos on YouTube, where it was, like, right underneath the video, people making responses to the video about how, no, you're wrong, man, or, no, I agree with you 100%, man, you're, like, the smartest guy ever. That was a nice addition onto the video, but I think people, like, harassed it a lot. So that may be why they got rid of it. Or they got rid of it just because a lot of internet places just get rid of things people love. People love some certain aspect of the website, they dump it for some random reason, I don't say why. Would I unsubscribe to Gary for this? No, I mean, I would never watch another Game of Thrones video of his, because he's going to be making 3 more, people, don't worry. Even though he said he's not going to watch the show anymore. I can almost guarantee he's going to be making at least 3 more videos about, you know, episode 4, 5, and 6. And maybe even a 4th video talking about the season as a whole. Or live streaming about it. So, yeah, I would just never click on any of those. I would continue to watch his stuff about the other stuff. And I would love it if people were making videos about how horrible the MCU is, about what he alludes to. But he's not. He's just hating on Captain Marvel. And I'll admit, I didn't like that movie either. You can go check my review for it if you don't believe me. As always, have a good one.